I guess. To steal a line from Mr. Rupert Moon at the back. Croeso cynnes I chi bawb i'r Lolfa'r Cynel yma ym Parc y Scarlets. Warm welcome to you all in the Cynel Lounge today at Parc y Scarlets. Good to see so many faces. It's a great turnout. We know we're a passionate group of Scarlet supporters, so it means a lot to us that you made the effort to come and see us tonight, to have a few updates from the right people at Parc y Scarlets, who I will introduce you to in a bit. Just to start with, I'm the MC. My name's Gareth Evans. I'm the MC for this evening. Just to try and keep things flowing, try and keep things on time. I will introduce a panel. We are going to have updates from panel members to begin the evening. We're going to turn it into a Q&A from some of the Scarlet supporters that we've received over the last couple of weeks. We'll do that in the middle part, and if we've got time then we'll open it up to the floor for questions from the floor at the end of the evening. But just to introduce a few people and a few guests here today, it's in attendance we have the Scarlet's Executive Chairman, Scarlet's MD John Daniels, Head Coach Dwayne Peel, Chief Finance Officer Phil Morgan, Academy Lead Scott Snedden, Academy Skills Coach Rodri Jones, Community Manager Paul Fisher. We're also joined by Club Captain Josh McLeod, players Johan Nicholas, Joe Roberts, Tommy Rogers, Harry O'Connor, and also there's a couple of representatives from Scarlet men and ladies under 18s, and that's Rhiannon Griffin and Keanu Evans. So I've explained the format. We'll go straight into it. We're going to start with a few words from our chairman. Put your hands together for Mr. Simon Mudrak.
Does this work? Okay, thanks everyone for coming. It really is great to see so many people in the room, and I really appreciate everyone making the effort to come down here this evening. And I hope this evening's session is informative, valuable, gets a lot of questions answered for people, and instills further hope in the future for this great club of ours. Over the last couple of years, we've done a few of these partially during COVID, and I think we had about 30, maybe 40 people in the room, so it's great to see enhanced numbers this evening. As Garen said, he's going to MC us and march us through the evening, but hopefully we tick boxes in terms of what everyone's looking to discuss this evening. Thank you to the staff for putting on this evening's event, for working overtime and setting up the room and all of the logistics around this, and also thanks to people across our rugby programs for coming here this evening to support this evening's discussions. There's no doubt the past couple of years have been financially very tough for Welsh rugby as a whole, indeed club rugby, and certainly for us as a club. But as we move forward, there are green shoots for optimism, which we'll talk through this evening. And also, as you'll see today, there are lots of things that continue to go on across the club on very many levels, and I'll largely let other people talk about that. There's no doubt that on the field, we've had a very disappointing season, and it seems like a long time ago, it was 12 months ago, that we were in the middle of a very special tail end of the season, with playoff rugby at the European level, and also a couple of notable wins against the Bulls, the Sharks, who came at us with pretty much a shadow Springbok team, and then a couple of fantastic performances in Europe, leading us to a semi-final here at the Park, where we were able to open the East End for the first time since before COVID. That does seem quite a long time ago now, but I'm sure we'll be back to those days fairly shortly. What I did want to do, though, is briefly reflect upon some of the things we have as a club that often we forget about, or we need to remind ourselves about continuously. So we are gifted to be sat here within what is the second biggest asset within the game of rugby in Wales. The rebuild cost of this stadium today would be circa £45 million. And there's no other club, there's no other capability in Wales to build a stadium and a piece of infrastructure like this within the game. We are still, we are now the only UK domiciled club business within the game in Wales. And we are backed by directors who take personal liability for the very continued existence of this club. And those people have been critical to our existence over the past 5 years through COVID and all that it has brought with it. Technically, we are the only club that hasn't gone bankrupt, hasn't sold to an offshore vehicle, or been traded for £1. And that's taken a lot of work and effort. That's come at a cost, but it has been a significant achievement and one that we hold dearly. We are 150 years old, and we have all of you behind us. And everyone who's going to stand up front today, no matter what our current roles are within this organization, we all started our relationship with this club as a fan, and we will end our relationship with this club as a fan. So I'll hand back to Garen to continue to take us through the evening. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your support. And thank you very much for your listening and participation this evening.
Thanks, Simon. We'll hear from Simon a bit later on again, but just for now, our captain for this season, Josh McLeod, wants to say a few words, if he can manage to come on the stage with one clutch in the hand. Josh, over to you. Just quickly, update on the injury just before.
So these sticks shouldn't really be here. Been given the all clear from the surgeon just now that everything's healing well. His words were, doesn't even look like I've had an operation. So, but as some of you may be aware, it is treacherous, the first couple of steps. So I'm keeping them close to my side for the next couple of days. And then hopefully in the coming weeks, I'll be back up on my feet good and proper.
Yeah. It's over to you now.
So obviously, just from a player's perspective, thank you very much for coming out tonight. And thank you very much, as always, to echo Simon's words, for your continued support. I know it's been a tough season. I feel your frustration. I'm watching on just like you as fans. But, from a player's perspective, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We're doing everything we can behind the scenes to sort of turn things around for the rest of this season and the coming seasons. So just from my perspective and on behalf of all the players, if there's any questions, I'm going to be around all evening to answer anything you have, whether it's getting me back up on stage or whether it's just floating around in intervals. So once again, thank you very much for coming, and speak to you later on.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Much appreciated, pal. Thank you. We'll take an opportunity. We'll go into a bit more detail around the financing of the game over, since before COVID and maybe since COVID, just to give you a clearer picture of the current set of circumstances that we're currently dealing with as a club. And to do that, we'll like to ask Philip Morgan, our Chief Financial Officer, really come up and say a few words and explain a few of the recent trends in not just Welsh rugby, it's world rugby, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Gar. I will do my best. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for giving up your Tuesday evening for us to give you a bit of an update on where the club is and some of the challenges we faced. We thought it would be appropriate to put finance at the top of the running agenda. We know it's nowhere near as exciting as rugby, and rarely any good news comes out of finance. But hopefully you will take comfort that the update will be brief and very light on numbers. What I'll attempt to share with you is how our approach to how the club is run financially. We've talked extensively about the impact COVID's had on professional sport. So I'll give you an update on exactly how that is felt today. Also, it's been widely reported the the high levels of debt clubs in Wales had to take on to survive COVID. So again, I'll talk to you about what that means for us and what we're doing about it. And finally, then I'll wrap up with a bit of a high-level commercial update on what's going on in and around the stadium. From a financial management perspective, we recognised several years ago that running a club reliant on benefactor funding was not a sustainable model for the future. So our focus was to create a business that could cover its own costs through constantly growing its commercial revenue and matched with responsible investment in rugby performance. The years that followed, we narrowed that funding gap so we were less reliant on benefactors. And the 2 years before COVID hit, we were actually one of only 2 clubs in the UK that reported a profit. So we actually generated more income than our costs. The other club, incidentally, was Exeter. And we've talked extensively about the COVID impact, was extensive. It literally, we went virtually 2 seasons without fans and our commercial partners in the stadium. But also I think it's important to maybe try and explain that whilst we're not only dealing with the direct impact that COVID had on us as a club and a business, we're also impacted by external income, and particularly the WRU. We rely on heavily for central funding as compensation for the players we provide to Wales, and also the competitions that we participate in, so the URC in Europe. They've also suffered headwinds as well. And the funding structure for our external funding works on how I describe a waterfall effect. So take the WRU, for example. They generate their income from their activities in, obviously, rugby matches and events in the stadium. The first cost out of the pot is their running costs, running the stadium, funding the rugby programs. The second funding goes to the community game. That is protected and ring-fenced. And what's left in the bottom comes to the pro game. So what we see by means of the waterfall is when there's less going in the tops, because they felt the pressure as well. They've had performance challenges, attendance has been down, there's been less events, there's less money coming at the bottom. So again, I'll show you the actual impact that has on the club. And the same's been true for URC. They've had headwinds commercially with commercial partners. Broadcast rights have been under pressure. And then we talked about, the debt. None of us wanted to take on debt, particularly after getting to a stage where we made a profit. Our benefactor saw the confidence in the business and the way the business is being run. So they agreed to write off over £8.6 million worth of debt. That put us in a very strong financial position to move forward. That gave us a positive balance sheet and something to build on for the future. And on the second slide, whilst I promised this was going to be light in numbers, this is the only one slide with numbers. So the first column, we call it the external impact. So that is the difference between our income this year and what we were seeing in the year before COVID hit. So if you take the WRU income and our commercial income, we are nearly £2.5 million worse off than we were pre-COVID. That's a fall of nearly 25% in our income. Then in order to survive COVID, we had to take on, as with the other clubs, high levels of debt. And you can see down the bottom, the actual cost of servicing that debt is just over £2 million. So what we've been dealing with as a business the last 2 years, as we've been rebuilding out of COVID, is an external impact from a reduction in our income and higher debt costs of £4.5 million. as we've all seen in our home finances, all our bills have gone up. And running the club and the stadium, we know I'm into that as well. So you can see in the second column, we have seen inflationary costs driven by higher travel costs. Food costs have been going up monthly. The Heineken have put their beer prices up twice, which we haven't been able to pass on. And we've also seen the costs of running the stadium. And to put some into perspective, our electricity bill has more than doubled to over £300,000 a year just to keep the lights on. And that's a huge amount for this business to manage. Now, we are not like a supermarket where we can simply pass those costs on to our fans in higher ticket prices or our commercial partners in higher rates. We are very mindful of the pressures our fans are under financially. So we've worked hard over the last 4 years to keep all our pricing frozen. And we've had to absorb the cost through making cuts to our cost base in the business. So whilst in our plans we've built, as we grow out of COVID and rebuild the business, we've built in, expanding the team, investing in key areas we want to improve on, particularly around marketing, communications, match day experience and service delivery. We just had to defer those costs. And we talked about debt. What we didn't see when we took out the COVID debt was interest rates increase as significantly as they have. When we took out the debt, including the margin on base rate, we were about 2 3/4%. That's now 8 3/4. And to put that into perspective, that means about an extra £40,000 a month we have to find to pay the interest bill. So, whilst we had to take on debt to survive, we are very grateful for the support the Welsh Government and the WRU provided in facilitating that debt. And we're now working very closely with them to restructure that in a more manageable level where we can rebuild the club and the game in Wales. And again, just to give a contrast, clubs in England had a slightly different loan structure. So they dealt directly with the UK government, we dealt with the Welsh Government, and they secured a fixed loan at 2%, irrespective of base rate changes. That's still fixed, with no payments being made until March 25. Now, if we had that exactly the same deal just on our first COVID loan, we would have been £1.8 million better off by this financial year. So it's a significant amount of money. There are active discussions. We're working closely with the WRU, and the WRU are engaged with Welsh Government to give us some breathing space. And that's what we've asked for. We are rebuilding the game in Wales. We've asked for, our ambition is to achieve a similar deal that I've got in England, which is a much lower interest cost and some breathing space on the capital repayments. So again, those discussions are positive. As an update on commercial, as the guy said earlier, it's been a tough season, which impacts attendance and commercial. The commercial and hospitality part of the business has performed really, really well. You might have seen, we've put out there, we've sold out a number of games during the season, and I think the next 2 are sold out. The lounges have been a great atmosphere on a match day, often with 380 people in this lounge, as well as a full third floor. The team have worked incredibly hard, engaging with 140 businesses throughout our region. Our forecasts were built on, what we achieved on the field last year and building on from that. And we know, that it's been a tough season. So we are behind slightly on our commercial revenue. But we have managed to offset this by managing our cost base and, as I say, deferring some of these appointments and strengthening the team. Like we'd hope, we just have to defer that. Next year, will be challenging, not only on the back of a tough season, but we're also very aware some sectors, and I've given higher education example, those sectors are feeling a lot of challenges. I think it was announced last week, Swansea University making redundancies. We are seeing some sectors feeling the pinch and tightening their belts. So we are very mindful of that. Next year is going to be tough. Non-match day income. Now, what I mean by that is the income we use the stadium. So when it's empty on match day, we are either putting on events, holding conferences, meetings, training sessions, just using the stadium to generate income. This part of the business was completely decimated with COVID. It went to nothing. So not only did we have to rebuild the team, we had to start from scratch, but also rebuild the customer base. And what we found last year is our core customer base was largely public sector. They took a long time to return to face-to-face meetings. They were very cautious. So last year was slow. It was a rebuild. I think it was widely publicised, the challenges around hospitality, recruitment. We faced exactly that. Some parts of the team we had to recruit and replace twice. This year has been very encouraging. The team have gelled well. We've secured some really events, some strong events. Worked with some new companies, more commercial than public sector. And we've secured, some large events. On the run up to Christmas, we had 3 bingo lingo events in our training barn, which were well attended. We had a very strong Christmas trading season. Some great feedback. We had the Castle Howell food exhibition where we had in the order of about 8,000 people coming through the barn over 3 days. And we've got 2 international women's football matches to look forward to in May and July. So the stadium is getting busier and busier. So we expect this year, with what we've got a direct line of sight on, being up around about 9 or 10% on pre-COVID levels. One area we have found particularly challenging, that what we had some success with pre-COVID was securing some large-scale music concerts. A lot of the promoters we worked with have become very cautious, doing less of them, and certainly very reluctant to move outside larger capital cities. So to give some context to, if we were to put on a large music event ourselves, a reasonable artist that if we want to achieve an attendance of between 10 and 12,000, the artist fee would be currently about £120,000. The support act would be about 20,000. The sort of rigging, the sound engineering team, and visuals would be a further 80,000. Pitch covering is another 20,000. So we got the risk that we can't afford to take, that we'd have a break-even point of needing to sell 8,000 tickets just to cover costs in excess of 200,000. So it's just to do a standalone event. We run the risk of potentially losing 60, 70,000 pounds on that if we didn't sell out. So there has been lots of discussions with promoters. Like I said, they're very cautious, particularly the ones we've done some great events with. We're approaching it slightly differently. We are engaged with a couple of smaller promoters, and we're going to try and deliver some exciting music events, which will be around about a 5,000 capacity, 5,000 attendance capacity, which we'll put in one stand. So hopefully we'll have some news. We'll try and land one in the summer, but certainly that's where we look to deliver that in the next year.
Phil, thanks for that. Cheers. Financial is done. We move on to the rugby, if that's all right, and we'll do that by hearing from Scarlets head coach Dwayne Peel.
Thank you, Diolch. Thank you. Just to echo, I think everyone who stood up, I think obviously we all recognise that it's been a difficult season so far, and results probably, haven't gone the way that we all would have liked, and I think that is for certain. What I'll try and project here now is some areas that we are focusing on to ensure that we obviously improve, but also strengthen over the next couple of seasons. Because I think that to echo Simon as well, when he mentioned 12 months ago we had a good run of things. This start of this season, yes, we haven't let the results go away. There's a lot of hard work going in behind the scenes, a lot of hard work going on, as Josh mentioned as well, on the field, on the training field. But I just want to highlight a few areas of focus for us and things that we've spoken about and where we are obviously working hard to improve. I think from my perspective, I think everybody knows there's been a big transition in the squad. Okay, so I think the last couple of seasons there we have seen players come, players go, and I think that has had a massive effect. Not just from a rugby perspective, but I think off the field. And one area of highlight there for me is transitioning our leadership group. Now, we've had a settled squad for a long time at this club, okay? And what we've seen over the last year or two, people like Samson Lee, obviously the names are there, Blade, Aaron Shingler, James Davis, Sione, Lee Halfpenny, Liam Williams, Reach Patrick, Johnny McNichol. Leaders within their own right, leaders off the field, leaders on the field. Okay, and I think that they've left the squad. So what I'd say to that is that it takes time. There's a lot of hard work going in behind the scenes to energize or to grow a new leadership group, a new culture, and that is taking time because we have got a young group. We have got a young group of men. A lot of who are sitting here today. And what I would say in terms of the leadership side of it is Josh, our captain, is a fantastic leader, and I think that he's core to building this group together. And there's a lot of hard work going in to ensure that this next generation of players can grow and also create their own culture, because I think a lot gets banded around culture, and I think that yes, we have a DNA, we have a core values, and it hasn't changed from when Mooney was playing to when I was lucky enough to wear the shirt to when these guys are wearing the shirt. And the core values of the club are the same, okay, but the players aren't the same, right? The generational changes are always ongoing, and I think for us it's about creating oxygen for these guys to create their own culture now and go and own that, and to grow in the next couple of seasons and make the shirt their own and drive the club forward to where we know it can be and want to be, and where we know it's going to be. And I think that we've got some real good quality players, and I think that with time and leadership, then we'll definitely see those Scarlet values growing. Which ties us on then to our recruitment targets, I suppose. I think that as we mentioned, there has been a lot of change, and there has been players coming in and going. And I think that understanding where we need to target is big. And I know John will cover off a lot of recruitment as we go along. But I think understanding that we do need to target certain areas of the game. We do need to understand within our recruitment targets of what our game model is, i.e. the way we want to play the game. Okay, we speak a lot around, and I'll jump to the next one. We speak a lot here about the Scarlet way. And we want to play a fast, attractive brand of rugby, no doubt. Right? Again, I'll go back to the core values of the club. That is a core value of the club. We want to play attractive rugby, and we have played attractive rugby at times, but we do understand as well that the game's ever evolving. Collision in the game is huge. winning game line is huge, right? Have we done that well enough this year? I don't think we have, right? I don't think we have. Okay, so that's an area of understanding where we need to target, who we're targeting, and who fits our game model and where we want to take our game model. Okay, with that, I think there is obviously an understanding of limitations. We have a budget decrease every year. Okay, again this year, John will go on with the figures in a minute, but significant budget decrease from this year to next season. So understanding then on the back of that, we need to target specific areas of the game, specific areas where we need to recruit, because we can't have it all. And there's some areas of recruitment, then, you know, we can't have the abundance of numbers there, and that carries risk with that. And I think we've seen it this year. Smaller budget means smaller squads. With that, there's a risk of injuries. We see, look, we're sitting here with our captain on crutches. You know, we got Joe there who was just come off the back of a Six Nations, fantastic Six Nations for him, carrying injury, and that is the risk when you do carry less numbers. Okay, that you are putting yourself out there. We've seen Time Plumtree this year, only represented the club 3 times, or I'm glad to say he should be fit for our next game, and that in itself is a risk if we have smaller squads. So we have to understand that. We have to understand the limitations of having smaller budget and having smaller squad, and that is a reality of where we are. But understanding also that we need to target a strong core group, which drives that forward. In terms of a game model, I've obviously spoken about the Scarlet Way, game trends, and squad strengths. Okay, as I mentioned, we want to play an attractive game. We want to play a high tempo game, and I'm hoping that, you know, obviously we need to have the strength of the squad to do that, and we also have certain caliber of player and certain style of player to be able to do that. And for us, that is the thing that we'll focus on going forward. And lastly, for me, I think our commitment to compete. Okay. I think a core value of this club is we want to fight and to represent the club in the best way, be it that's win, lose or draw. And I'll hold my hand up to say that at times this year, there has been periods of games where it doesn't look that that's the case. Okay, and that's fine, and I'll accept that. But what I will say is that from a group of players, from a group of staff, coaching, working hard behind the scenes, our commitment to want to compete, our ambition to want to compete for this club is without question. And I think that, you know, I think for us as a group, for you as supporters to understand that as well, that when we do represent the club, when we do wear that shirt, that we're willing to go to war for it. And I think that is where the future of this club, and that's why the leadership and the group and allowing this next generation of players to grow their own culture to get that is so important. And I think that there's a group sitting underneath with obviously represented by Keanu, and Sneds will speak about that group in short time. But I think that the ambition to compete is the big thing for me. We want to be able to compete, and we want to be able to go out and play the style of rugby that we want to play and that you guys want us to play. So I think that's the future. I think it's an exciting one. But I think that, you know, there's a lot of hard work to go, and but we're all here to do that and to move things forward.
What are you doing? And to stay within rugby, we'll next hear from Scarlets Managing Director John Daniels.
Diolch ar. Yn gyntaf, ga I ymddiheurio am yr cyflwyniadau sydd ddim yn ddwyieithog. Can I apologise that the presentations are not bilingual, but if I'm honest, what we've tried to do is shape the presentations so we're not duplicating the questions, too much of the questions that are coming later. So these are literally being created this afternoon because we were still having questions come in. So that also means, due to the questions, you won't be hearing too much from me at this stage. because we'll cover a lot more later on. But I do want to touch on the squad planning and the transition that Dwayne has already mentioned, because I have talked previously about the transition over 2 to 3 years, and I would say this is the second year of that transition. Dwayne has mentioned some of the players that have left, and clearly some of that has been required because of part of the transition, but also there have been, I'd say, 5 players in that time that have left the squad through injury retirement rather than any other reason. And they are, as well as being leaders, as Dwayne has mentioned, they're high quality players in our group that serve the club well. And, Lewis Rawlins, James Davis, Aaron Shingler, Samson Lee and Blade Thompson being those 5. However, in terms of the transition, we have last year our average age in the senior contracted squad was 27. Next year it'll be 24. So to highlight the work that's going on with Dwayne and Josh and the other young leaders, that's where we're at. That's the challenge we've got, and that's the work that's going on, is to get them to the leaders that have departed as well. So I want to touch as well on, in next year's squad, there are a number of international players, some of them here tonight, recently capped. Congratulations. And I think it's important for us because that reflects the transition. We've got a number of players next year, age 25 and under, that are contracted for next season in Kemsley Mathias, Harry O'Connor, that's here tonight, Sam Wainwright, Tame Plumtree, Sam Costello, Johan Lloyd, Joe Roberts, Tom Rogers. These guys are here tonight. So I think that not only is it evidence of the transition we've been going through, but hopefully it gives you as much hope for the future as it gives us as a group. We've already announced some retention and some recruitment, as you can see there in Ben Williams, Dan and so on. I'm not going to go through the names again. What I will say is retention and recruitment is ongoing, so we're not done yet. There are still some more that are done that we need to announce, but they're not completed yet. What's the next slide? Yeah. So what we did want to do, in recognition that your valued support during a tough season, and we recognise as well that you are looking to us for hope for next season. And what we are happy to confirm tonight is that we're delighted that Sam Lousy has committed his future to the club by extending his contract for next season. So Sam is a key player within the group and a key leader as well, as the boys will recognise. So to have him commit his future, I think we're all delighted with that. So before I finish there, I just want to touch on the other thing that gives me great hope from a rugby point of view going forward is the next presentations you're going to get. We did a session with Crease 16 recently, and we were talking around season ticket promotion and so on. And one of the things that came out of there was there's a lot of good work going on that perhaps we haven't had an opportunity to showcase. And that's specifically around the academy. I'm delighted that Scott is here to be able to talk to that. The girls program, and that's a significant commitment from us because that's an unfunded program. We've taken on that responsibility to deliver that, and it's great that Rhiannon can be here tonight as well to represent the girls along with Rodri. And then at the community level, I'm delighted that Paul Fisher will be here as well to talk through that. So I won't lie, a lot of the questions later on are directed at me. So I'll save the rest until then and then hand over, and I'll see you later for the Q&A. Diolch yn fawr.
Great, thank you, John. Diolch yn fawr. Yeah, as John mentioned, there's lots of great work that goes on behind the scenes at the Scarlets, really, that probably lots of us aren't aware. It is something we should shout about, and we probably don't do it justice, really, or enough justice, really. But just to give an update from an academy community perspective, if academy lead and academy coach Scott Snedden and Rodri Jones come to the stage, and along with Scarlets community manager Paul Fisher.
Can't reach the floor. Evening. Appreciate everybody coming, and just echo the thanks from everybody. Just firstly, from me, as head of the academy at the moment, it's probably been a busy and exciting year. So a pretty successful one, and I'm sure a lot of you would have followed on social media or some of our games, but I'm just going to go through a few updates and hopefully inform you of some of the stuff that's been going on this year and what we intend to do over the next couple of years. There's 5 new EPP and Jewish Shield groups that have come more aligned to us over the last 12 months. So whilst challenging, it's been successful. So it's allowed us to align our pathways from 14 up to seniors, which is something I believe that the club hasn't done before. I'm pretty grateful in terms of Dwayne and the rest of the coaching team there to be able for us to align, I guess, the way that we want to play, some of the S&C and some of the philosophies through the pathway, but also allowing a lot of coaches to have some coach development, as well as a good opportunity to have eyes, I guess, over boys from 14, 15, where previously it wasn't as easy. But we've had a lot of opportunities to upskill these guys through masterclasses pre-Christmas. Off the back of that, the success of it in terms of Mynydd Mawr reaching the final of the Jewish Shield, Llanelli schools winning their final, also Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion doing pretty well themselves. So pretty successful on the whole. The next one, okay, in terms of not the next slide. Too excited. Just the next one, okay, our Scarlets under 18s, led by Keanu and Tian Sparrow. We won the regional 18s competition, which we haven't done for 6 years. So a lot of hard work went into that, and I think it's probably important that everybody understands what we're trying to achieve off the back of that. It's not about winning. Okay, it's about preparing these guys to go and play senior men's rugby. So our challenge wasn't to win. That was probably a byproduct of how hard they worked. But you know, our challenge now from these boys is to prepare them for men's rugby. I guess off the back of that, the group of 18s, there's 7 of them that have since gone on to play men's rugby or are due to play men's rugby in the next couple of weeks, which I don't think we've done before. We've been pretty fortunate through the hard work and the recognition, rightly so. We've had 21 internationals at age grade this year. So that's 9 at under 18s. And although there was only 1 win out of 3 out in Italy last week, for those boys to run England closer and narrowly miss out in the last couple of minutes is something that age group hasn't done before. And there's 9 of our boys within that group. There's 4 boys, there would have been more, but due to injury, there's 4 boys, actually that's 5 because we've had a 5th called up to Wales 19. So just for context, those boys are too old for Wales under 18s because their birthday falls the wrong side of December 31st. But the Welsh Rugby Union understand that's a big age group. So we've got 5 boys that are currently in camp that will play Ireland this weekend at Ystrad Mynach, and they will go and travel to Italy next weekend to go and play Italy under 19. So great experience for those boys, and also great exposure to other coaches, different environments, different countries, which is quite an experience for some boys if they haven't got a passport. It has happened before. Probably the pleasing thing, okay, yes, we've got a lot of internationals at that age group, but 40% of our under-18s group this year have still got next year to go. Okay, so yes, there is a high turnover year on year, but the fact that we've still got 40% to come through the pathway and pass on their experiences of this year is exciting for that group, even more so next year. Just from a staffing point of view, I think it's important that we recognise probably the staff that have been involved in those international programmes. We're not just about player development, it's also about staff development. So the exposure and experience those guys have had has been brilliant. And I'm pleased to say that 13 of the under-18 squad are contracted. Okay, so that's the sign of a successful group. That's not saying that they're all going to make future professionals, but we'll do our best to make sure that they give it their best shot. We'd go to the next slide. Trudy, thanks. Just a couple of things outside of our RAG program. So I think the importance of our pathways that feed into us, okay, in terms of our ecosystem, how we support our stakeholders. So Llandevry College winning the National Schools and College League, that's an outstanding achievement. Okay, we've got a lot of boys in that program. We've also got staff that are in that program. So, it's important that boys get in the habit of winning. And we're fortunate enough that Llandevry College have had a successful season. CSG, Coleg Cigar, probably still kicking themselves. They didn't make that final. But the fact that we had, two of our schools and colleges in that top tier come first and third, it's pretty exciting. As for Dyffryn and Pembrokeshire College, two of probably our newer rugby colleges within the performance pathway. I know that both have invested heavily within their programs, and they've been successful in their own rights. What I haven't mentioned there, which is important, the Welsh schools play in our pathway. Maesy Gwendraeth and Stradi School got to the Welsh schools final, and Maesy Gwendraeth, which is a hub of, I guess, exciting players coming through the programme, was successful on that day. If we look towards now our senior academy, so our group that's 18 to 23 that play a massive part over the next couple of years in terms of, don't want to say it too loud, but trying to push some of the other boys out of the squad, okay, or push for their positions, because it's important that that's their aspirations. That creates competition and drives standards. But Llandevry winning the cup on the weekend, that's another sign of the pathway working, and how important Llandevry and Carmarthen Quins are within our pathway. Just to touch upon that, 90% of our senior academy, okay, will have played 18 plus games by the end of April. So a lot of them are upwards of 25, which, for that age group is pretty significant. I know that there was probably a few questions whether those clubs could assist in the player development, but yes, there have been some challenges, which there always are with change. But the exciting thing is that the amount of game time those guys and the growth that they've had, that 11 of those senior academy boys have had an outing for the Scarlets this year. So again, we talk about experiences and exposure. Those guys have had a taste of it now, and they know what it takes now to kick on and try and grow moving into next season. Just to touch upon really what we're building towards, 10 of our, for next season, 10 of our RAG 18s are going into the senior academy. For context, I think the previous year was 4 or 5, so that's quite a huge number. I'd like to be sat here in 12 months' time to say that all 10 of them are going to play for the Scarlets, but that's not the reality. The reality is that a lot of those guys will play in the EDC, but the exciting thing is that 1 or 2 or potentially 3 of those boys could kick on in the next 12 months and go and make their senior debuts. And I guess that's our challenge, to provide support and enhance those boys in the pathway. And I'm probably excited that, we are investing in that pathway and the club are investing, which is, we see the importance of it. You've obviously seen the advert out in terms of the header development pathways. We're very close to being able to add probably nutritional support for our junior and senior academy, which just for context, our players, or all of the players within the Welsh under-20s, on average, put on 4 kilograms of lean muscle in 2.5 months within that program, because they were fed and watered day in, day out. For the lay person, 18 to 20-year-olds, if you don't have any relationships with them, they're not the best at cooking. So as much support that we can give them, over the next couple of years is only going to probably accelerate their growth. So that's our plan. Just outside of that, we're going to employ, find some good talent ID staff that sit across our EPP and Dual Shield groups to build better communications and better probably talent ID for us moving forward. It's exciting that the talent that is out there. I guess our challenge is to keep providing them the support and probably the opportunities and exposure to go and build on where they are at the moment. But it's probably an exciting time. And I can sit here and say that with confidence. And there's a lot of hard work from the staff that have gone into it. So happy to field any questions after. But it's a time, I know that John and Peely have spoken about the pathway. But it's excited that we're aligned. It's excited that what's going to come in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Thank you. Just going to give you a quick update around the women's game. As John said, it's fairly limited in terms of funding. However, it's a really, really exciting opportunity for us as a region to build on and to grow the game itself. So just around some of the stuff we've done over the last 12 months, during last summer, we had our first pilot of the summer development training program, which was a limited group that we ID'd through coaches within the region who had exposure to the fundamental skills around what it requires if you were to become a professional or a semi-professional athlete, and obviously the skills within off-field as well as on-field around gym programming, nutrition and things like that. So that was the first sort of step building into our under-18s program. We had Scarlets coaches linking with our colleges in Coleg and Llandovery College around S&C and rugby development, which is a huge link for us in terms of retaining girls within our region. As you're probably aware, there isn't many rugby opportunities in our region, so girls of a young age feel the need to go across the bridge to find rugby, and they do that at a very young age, going to colleges such as Hartbury to try and find that. So it's really important that we work with our colleges to try and support the rugby program, which then benefits the rugby within our region and retains, obviously, girls playing in our region, which can ultimately grow the game. So off the back of that, Llandovery College reached the final of the Welsh schools and colleges in the Principality, where they were beaten by Coleg Gwent, but a huge step in the right direction for our colleges there. Following on from that, the girls came into our full under-18s rugby program, where they were supported around obviously the rugby side of things, but for a lot of girls they had their very first taste of what semi-professional or professional rugby would look like to them in terms of strength and conditioning. So they'd been in obviously rugby programs where they'd throw the ball about, but never actually had the gym program in to go with it. So That was the first experience for our under-18s, which obviously had a real good impact around what happened on the field. So following that, they played 5 regional fixtures against the other regions, and 2 RGC teams were involved with that as well. 4 of our under-18s girls represented Wales, and one of those is in the room this evening, Rhiannon, in the recent Six Nations. I think you came back on Sunday, was it, Ray? Yeah, so she's just come back from a campaign with Wales, which is really pleasing for us. Moving on to the next slide, please. We've just launched our under-17s programme, which is the very first in our region and across Wales, where it's open to under-17s players within the region, and really focused on the development of that, so that we're ahead of the game going into next year's under-18s programme. As some of you may have seen, this year there were 2 teams launched in Wales to underpin the national game, which was Blython Thunder and Gwalior Lightning. Parc y Scarlets actually became the home of Blython Thunder, which is a semi-professional game playing cross-border rugby, and as I said, underpinning the national game. So real exciting times for us, and real good from us, I think, as a region to have had hold of Blython and made it their home. Along with that, Scarlets Academy coaches were involved in coaching Blython. One of those was Phil John, who was a scrum coach, and myself, who was the backs coach. Just to touch on some of the community stuff, Davy Timberwolves and Taff Valley Tigers under 16s and 18s have just become the WIU national plate winners over recent weeks, which shows that the hubs underpinning our regional game is growing and is strong. We've had a number of girls referred to the West PDC, which is in essence a Welsh Rugby Union sort of academy in the west of Wales. We've had a number of girls referred to the main PDC as well as the development PDC, which is only going to grow the game further. As a club, we have a huge aspiration to have a professional women's team underpinned by an established and effective development pathway. We are working really hard to try and give as much opportunity as we can to girls within our region, and we know we've got a long way to go. But what we're trying to do is build year on year, and I think as we build, the more opportunities will come, and it'll just grow the game, A, in our region, and B, nationally. So it's real exciting times around the women's game, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Rod. And over to Paul Fisher to give an update on the community.
My heart is about 250 beats a minute at the moment. Just from a community perspective, primary school visits, if you have a look at the screen, we deliver 100 skill sessions a month, 1,200 per year. We engage with 10,000 participants over the space of a year. We facilitate primary school festivals, with 2,500 children engaged from year 2 to year 6. We then run Scarlet recruitment evenings, with our Scarlet players making appearances. We visit then the 49 clubs across our region, so we're engaging there with just under 4,000 participants. We do run CPD events for our community coaches, and we do look to qualified students to support us with our rugby delivery as well in the primary school programme. This year as a trial, we've run under 7 and 8 rugby festivals at Parc y Scarlets. We had really successful. We had 32 teams enter, so 320 players, okay, for one festival. So that's something we will look at doing moving into next season. And then our Scarlets Match Day Festival and half-time experience. We do get 8 to 10 teams from across the region participating in a festival in the barn pre-match. And then obviously flag bearing and participating on the pitch, playing half-time tag. With our Scarlet Rugby camps, we run between 10 and 12 camps a year. And we've had this year, okay, a really great turnout. We've had over 1,000 participants, children between the ages of 6 and 14, boys and girls, taking part in those camps. And finally, we do support national events such as the Royal Welsh, the Yle Eisteddfod, and then more local then the club festival, and then schools and organisation requests as well. So if we move on to the inclusion programme, we do run 30 fit, fed, fun camps delivered in socially deprived areas across the whole of our region. We have engaged 1,500 participants in those camps. We do support and facilitate our mixed ability rugby teams, the Warriors and the Vikings, and we have established inclusive community clubs to provide a mixed ability pathway service in those two teams. We facilitate walking rugby festivals both in Carmarthenshire and in Pembrokeshire, and we do run disability events and deaf community events across the whole of our 3 local authorities, and this year we have engaged with 350 participants across the 3 counties. We support both our wheelchair rugby teams, one based in Haverfordwest and the newly formed team in Aberystwyth as well. We're currently delivering sessions in a mosque in Haverfordwest, and we are going to be delivering sessions to the Polish community and the Syrian community in Llanelli. And then finally we do work with a local authority in supporting the Veterans Programme, the homeless. We work with Neat Children programmes, and more recently a new STAR programme working with children who had bad life experiences. And then finally we do run a Sporting Memories weekly meeting at Parc y Scarlets, and we are looking to expand that further across the region as well.
Start the second half. So obviously these are questions that have been collated over the last few weeks from the Scarlets supporters. So we've got about 9 or 10 questions to run through to begin with, and then we'll open it up to the floor if that's okay. We are going to start immediately. Question 1 is for John Daniels, as expected. First question is from Ryan Gwither. Why do we re-sign players who have not performed very well? And we have some club legends in some cases who do not feature very much in the matchday team, who are still being paid. Can we not release these players and spend the money on younger and hungrier players?
Right, so my mic seems better than Garen's at the moment. So, so there's a couple of parts to that question. First of all, obviously the opinion on how players are playing, that's a significant part of any retention or recruitment process. We should recognise that when we talk about players who haven't performed well, that's not linear. There's other reasons why people are in form or out of form, but really we're looking at the ability rather than a short window of that assessment. In terms of club legends that perhaps aren't featuring at the moment, what I will say, and this has come up already, but I cannot say this enough. Even when they're not playing, the input and the value that they provide around the environment in the working week, and I'm sure Josh will reinforce this, is critical, especially around a younger group. Don't get me wrong, they want to be playing as well. And that's a conversation between them and Dwayne. But they add huge value. And finally, in terms of why don't we release them? Well, there is the ability to have a conversation with players about release, but frankly, there's a legal agreement between us, and that can only happen by mutual consent. Now, sometimes there's opportunities for players to take that, but sometimes they don't want to. They want to stay and fight for their place, and so on. So, in terms of effectively opening up a contract and letting them go, legally we can't do that, and that's not where we're at. But we do have those discussions around mutual consent. Yeah.
There's one at the end. Who's responsible for player signings and retention? How has that worked out?
So we've talked a bit about the planning, but in terms of the decision making of individual players, the budget is set, and ultimately it's my responsibility to ensure that we recruit within the budget. if we go over budget, then I'm going accountable to the board. There's a process of identifying what our needs are and then engaging with recruitment analysts and agents to find the best options. And then there's a group that meets to discuss the pros and cons of each. And often you can't just discuss one player in isolation, because for one player you might need to invest some more of the pot to get that player because he's considered critical. But that might need a discussion then on another position where you've got to perhaps lower the budget available for that player. So it's not an easy process, but ultimately the decision on which player we go for within the confines of the budget is Dwayne's. Always has been the head coach's call, and I believe that's right as well, because they're in a very difficult position in terms of the spotlight being on them for performance, and I believe they're entitled to the autonomy to be choosing their group.
And we're staying with recruitment and retention. It's a big thing for our supporters. So we have several questions really from Roger Hicks and Crease 16 around this. So it seems to be passed. Is the money saved from big player salaries coming off the books? Big player salaries coming off the books going to be completely reinvested to strengthen the squad. How far progressed is recruitment and retention to confirm next season's squad? And given that some of our highest profile players are expected to leave, what will the quality of the squad be, and what is the likelihood of the Scarlets being even remotely competitive next season? That's to John and Dwayne.
Shall I do the first two and you do the third? Okay, so in terms of the money saved from players leaving, no, it can't all be reinvested, because we're currently, current squad budget is higher than next year's salary cap. So no, it's not possible, but also for all the reasons that have been touched on already, and especially, Phil's painting of the financial landscape, we can't reinvest it all. So what we need to do is try and invest as much of that as we can, as effectively as possible, whilst being competitive. And I'll hand over to Dwayne at the end there to talk about whether he thinks we will be competitive next year. How far progressed is recruitment? Well, I'd say in terms of contracted players next year, there's still a couple of players we would like to retain, and there's a couple of targets we may wish to bring in. But I'll be honest with you as well, we're still nudging Simon and the board to see if we can squeeze a bit more out of the pot to get more as well. But we're 85-90% of the way there in terms of what we know will be contracted next year. And as I said, there are some players that are contracted recruits to come in that haven't been announced yet. And there's a number of reasons why we wouldn't announce it. It could be to do with the other club, the player, or actually, we do want to create some excitement around those recruits. Because, as I said earlier, we recognise that, especially at the moment, with results not being where they were last year at this time, for example, we do want to reassure you of our, despite all the challenges, our excitement for next year. So in terms of that competitiveness.
Yeah, and I think that, I mentioned our commitment to compete, and that is always the goal. Regardless, when we wear the shirt, we want to compete. And I think that John's right. I think we have made some good signings for next season. Yes, the budget has come down, and the number of players we will have in the squad will be less. And I've talked about that already. But what I would say is that the recruits that we are bringing in will definitely add and strengthen our squad. Obviously the news that's just been broken around Sam Losey as well is a big signing for us. I think that he's a player, who leads by example. You know, he's a fantastic leader around the group as well, and I think that sets a good example for our younger forwards as well. So great news that he's staying. So I think that he's probably one that you thought that was expected to leave, and I know there's been a bit of publicity around him potentially leaving the club, but yeah. So look, I think there's just still a bit of work to do. You know, as John mentioned, but I'm pleased with what we've done so far within the confines of what we've got, and also it's another season down the line where we've got our young players who are coming through and getting better every year. And I think that you know, we haven't really seen Tame Plumtree this year, who's been a new signing for us. You know, we've seen 3 games out of him. Jared Taylor was an excited new player. He's had 1 game. You know, Sam Costello's played 2 games this season, or 2.5 games this season. So, look, I think there's some good players within our group, and you know, I'm excited about pushing on with that. Really.
Cheers, Dwayne. Moving on to a bit more on the commercial side. This question was asked by Ian Wilson. Can Crease 16 really relates to the Scarlets Casto shop? When are we going to have a fully stocked shop, and do Scarlets have any input into the pricing, as the region is not an affluent area and prices are high? For example, 90 quid for a light rain jacket. That goes to Phil.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was probably just over a year ago we were in this room and asked a very similar question at a Crease event. You know, I think, you know, it's fair to say the experience, the retail experience we've had with Casto certainly is far below what we expect. It's certainly not what we were assured we were going to get, and it's been a constant work on with them. You know, it's been you know, a challenging relationship to get product delivered, and also the range. What they've done in the last 12 months is they've now invested in an experienced team. They have got senior people from other teamwear manufacturers and strengthened the team with the skills that they needed really on day one. They also didn't have the logistical infrastructure in place. You know, they've invested in a UK distribution centre. On a, you know, hopefully a positive note, you know, we had, you know, some good meetings up in Manchester with them, looking at the range next season, and particularly the leisure range. We see in some more casual T-shirts, which look, you know, really, you know, nice products. And we've been given a schedule of your sort of merchandise you would expect: your pencil cases, your water bottles, a range of about a dozen items, which we will receive delivery in June and July this year. So it's been a challenge. You know, they've gone from nothing 6 years ago to, it's not often you watch a game, whether it's rugby, football, you know, Casto isn't one of the team, you know, team manufacturers. You know, hopefully, you know, next season will be better. I'm very mindful. I said similar things a year ago. But it feels they are making progress. Coming on to the point on pricing, I mean, the simple answer is we don't have any control. You know, part of our commercial agreement with Casto is we sold, you know, the rights for them to supply everything. We do provide constant feedback. Some they take on board, some they don't. We also highlight the clear spikes when they have their sales periods, where our supporters buy most of the product. So that is giving them the, you know, the data point that the price is too high ordinary. So yeah, it's constant feedback. You know, and we're very mindful of the area. Hence my comments earlier about us maintaining all our prices and absorbing as much cost as we can.
Okay, thank you. We've had a couple of questions around how the club and board communicate with supporters. Some of the questions used words and phrases like frustration, dire, at an all-time low ebb, and that club officials are in hiding. So, question for you, Simon. Why are communications so bad from Scarlets to their supporters, and what are the club doing about it?
I mean, certainly, I would accept, excuse me, we need to do a better job of communicating and find different ways to communicate with people. When I saw this question, I did reflect upon what communication touch points have I had personally over the past 3 to 4 weeks. So bear with me. And this is not an atypical sort of month for me. So I went to see Carmarthen County Council and gave their full board exec a briefing on the status of things with the club, with Phil and Nigel Short, our former chairman. We had a board meet around which we have a number of stakeholders. Crease have representation as well as player representation. I've supported 2 press releases around changes to do with the club. Spent an hour and a half recording video that's been published around some of those changes around the club. 7, or it might have been 8 separate phone calls with journalists. This evening, tonight, which going forward we'll be looking to do probably twice a year. And I've responded to about a dozen DMs through different social media platforms directly. So, certainly there are a number of different types of communications that go out, but undoubtedly across the club as a whole, we need to improve our communications, to do so in different ways going forward, and that is something that we will do.
Okay, and staying with you then, Simon. This time around, the WRU strategic review and the implications for the Scarlets. This comes from Andrew Goff and several other supporters. Can you update us on the discussions with the WRU with regards to everything is on the table for the strategy that is going to be published in June? Should one of the recommendations be to reduce the number of regions, and therefore could Scarlets be lost or merged with the Ospreys? So therefore, where do you see the Scarlets in 5 years' time?
So there's a lot to unpick in that. In terms of the strategy, Abby has stated several times, as have others, that everything's on the table. The way I look at it is, and I am involved in the discussions, very much so, and we are right in the thick of those discussions as we speak. We've got a big 2-day session in Cardiff next week, and there will be a strategy that will be published by the end of June. In reality, it'll largely be formed by the end of April. So we are in a critical period. The sort of dirty secret in the room is there is quite a lot of money around rugby, but you can't fund everything. So we have to make some decisions in terms of what's important. And I think across club rugby as a whole, verbally, I was at Quinn's last week, talking to PRL, talking to CBC, talking to Quinn's, talking to, I hate to say it, but Glasgow, talking to Six Nations around this. And ultimately, the unions at almost every level across the world need to decide, is the club game important? And the reality is it has to be considered important because it feeds the international game. And I think over the past 10, 15, 20, 25 years maybe, there's been a belief at the international level that the club game can be treated as a second-class citizen and that the talent will flow up to the international level regardless. And that has to be revisited. And that is a core fundamental part of the conversation that we're having with the WRU at this point in time. What I would say is, nothing means anything until it's finalized. But in terms of the level of conversation, the frankness of conversation, and the desire to get something done, we are in a totally different place than we were 12 months ago in our conversations with the union. And yes, everything is on the table. If I answer the second part of the question, for the record, the last time a merger with the Ospreys was discussed was back in 2019, except for the discussion that did occur between Cardiff and the Ospreys last year. But in terms of a merger discussion between the Scarlets and the Ospreys, we're going back 5 years in time, and there's been no subsequent discussion in relation to that. Where do I see the Scarlets in 5 years' time? Clearly, we're going to break the hoodoo of getting knocked out in the semi-final of the European Cup. And we're actually, going to go forward and we're going to win the thing, finally. If I look at the club and I look at the world of rugby, I do believe that the world of rugby will change. and that we will restructure the game, not just within Wales, but at a club level, at a league level. There's certainly work to be done, and opportunity, I think, looking at PRL, so the league in England, and URC, and also the role of Europe, and how that comes into play. And if you look at, what within the correct structure, with the correct level of funding, and the correct level of presentation and engagement, are the ingredients of clubs that should be successful within the right structure. This club has got those ingredients. And I think a clear sense of purpose, a clear set of values, a clear sense of community, a clear sense of belonging, a clear sense of history. The provenance is really, really important in sports. The ability to grow homegrown talent, which we've been able to do historically, incredibly successfully, and the future looks bright on that front. World-class infrastructure, and a very passionate, supportive fan base. And the list goes on. But we have those things. We don't need to manufacture them. We need the opportunity to be able to bring all those things together in the right structure. And I'm optimistic that over the next 5 years, we will get there.
Good, great. Rugby question to John Daniels from Brian Jones. Cardiff and Ospreys both suffer the same financial restrictions imposed by the WRU, but both look well coached and are making decent progress. We are left behind in their wake. Why is this? Where does the fault lie, and how can we turn ourselves around?
Okay, so Dwayne wants to come in on this as well. Okay, but I'll go first. So, and I'm trying to be careful here because I don't want to be seen to be making excuses, because we all know and accept that performances and results this year haven't been at the standard that you or we would want. But, in that journey that Phil presented previously, all clubs have been hit, but because of where we were at that time and the way the funding model was configured, we were the highest funded at that time, and now it's come down to an equally funded model. So that's something that we've been managing. Cardiff, in terms of results, I think, there's similarities there, really. They also are probably not happy with their results this year. That doesn't mean that we should be happy with ours, because they're similar. And to be fair to the Ospreys, they're going well. We can't deny that. And, good luck to them, because they've got a game coming up where if they win it, they'll get to the same point we were at last year in the Challenge Cup. So all the best to them. Certainly our thought process is not wishing bad luck or ill on anybody else. Our challenge is getting up there and being better than them, not hoping that they would be worse. So in terms of turning ourselves around, we've talked about, Josh has spoken, Dwayne has spoken, everybody around the hard work that is going in. We've talked about what we're trying to do in terms of the squad, to strengthen. And, we have looked again at the leadership structure within our group. And I think, and I know Dwayne agrees with this, I think, the appointment of a performance director to work with Dwayne to drive that winning culture is a big part of what I think will deliver that turnaround that the question asks for.
Yeah, I'd like to come in because I think it's important that we recognise as well, look, yes, we're behind those guys in the league at the minute, but we want to be the West Welsh region, no doubt, okay? But also we want to chase up the league. It's not all about beating only the Welsh regions. We've got to be in playoff rugby. We want to be chasing the Irish teams. We want to be chasing your Glasgows are going well at the minute. the African teams pose a different challenge. That's where we want to be competing. So I think I understand the question, and both those sides. Look, we've had some fantastic games against them over the course of this season. You know, we managed to win against Cardiff, and obviously lost to close neighbours down the road. But I think it is important for us as a club not to be content with we have to push forward to be in the playoff areas, and that's what we need to be chasing. Not, yes, we want to be, and if that means that Cardiff, Ospreys, ourselves, Dragons are in right up the top, then that's brilliant for Welsh rugby. But for us as a club, like, I want this club to be in the playoffs, not just being content with beating our local rivals. And I think, as much as that is really important, and I know from a bragging perspective, and I know having been there myself, it's a brilliant place to be when you're playing those games. But for us as a club, we need to be higher. We need to aim to go higher. And you know, I understand the question. But you know, for me, I think we need to be thinking bigger.
Yes, following on from that one, it might cover some ground you've already looked at, really. But question from Roger Hicks. Given that we know the budgets will be dropping by 700k and the recruitment of a new rugby performance director is planned, how much will the playing squad have to reduce by for the 24-25 season? To John.
Okay, so there's a couple of things linked there. I'm guessing the assumption around budgets dropping by 700k, that figure's come from something to do with salary cap, but it's not that relevant, because we know that there are cost challenges, and we know that the squad will be coming down. So in terms of the squad budget, you know, we are, as I said, still working on it, but the reality is it'll probably have to come down 20 to 30%, somewhere in that range for next season. What I will say is, you know, in terms of the market in British rugby, world rugby, other than maybe the odd club in France and Japan that seem immune to it, the market is dropping. So that, you know, has accounted for and will account for some of that reduction. And trust me, any players that have gone through the process of renegotiation in the last 18 months, including this year, and it'll be the same next year, they know the pressure on that market. So there is a reduction, but part of it is driven by the market forces, because you know, it's coming down everywhere, because the pressures on the global game are huge. And I think we've said this previously in events. In reality, the game of rugby union was operating, but it was bankrupt, and it's been bankrupt for years. And I think there was a stark reminder of that with two clubs in England, and then, you know, obviously followed by teams like Jersey going bankrupt. So the market takes care of some of it, but yeah, the squad will need to reduce by 20 to 30%, I predict.
Question for Simon Modrak from Brian Jones regarding the recent restructure. Will this recent announcement result in a higher wage bill, and do you think that we are effectively rewarding failure?
So I presume this question relates to the organisation restructure that we've just gone through. So what we've done with the organisation structure is we've refocused the team in order to help us grow and move forward, which we have to coming out of this. And we've done that across three areas. So, you know, Phil is sitting on top of finance. We still need an incredibly strong, steady hand over our finances. It's been a tricky couple of years, and you know, Phil, as he talked us through the numbers earlier, you know, demonstrated his grasp of those numbers, as well as the team at the back there. I can see them, who've done an incredible job of, you know, helping keep things afloat and literally keeping the lights on, despite the cost of keeping the lights on literally having doubled over the past couple of years. John is picking up the day-to-day operations and oversight of the commercial side of the organisation, and that's created capacity within the rugby environment to bring a performance director in so that we can have somebody work with Dwayne on a more broader remit around rugby. So Dwayne focuses very much on coaching and leading the First 15 program, with a performance director then, helping us grow rugby on a more broader basis going forward. We have been able to make these changes within the budget for next year. So they're supported by the business plan, and the business plan is underpinned by centralised funding from the WRU, from our commercial income, and also by the support of our benefactors.
Next one, back to you, John. It's from Crease 16 regarding season memberships and improvements on the pitch. Our member survey suggests that over 50% of season ticket holders are either not going to renew or are undecided. What have you got to say to supporters to encourage them to renew and give them confidence that we will see significant improvements on the field?
Hopefully some of it's been covered in terms of what you've heard tonight, but there are a number of elements which we plan would come together to give us that hope, so that we want that 50% number to be up there, 90 to 100%. So, we've talked about what we're trying to create in terms of not just the putting the squad together, but what Dwayne talked about in terms of the key areas in terms of growing that performance. That'll be enhanced and improved with the performance director role. And also then the pressure from below, I suppose, as Scott mentioned, in terms of the talent coming through, creating that pressure and creating that force from below to drive that performance. I would just like to touch on the performance director recruitment, because I do want to make it clear that the day we announced the restructure, that recruitment process started. So the job spec is with all the relevant agencies across the globe. We've had a great response already, with a mix of people with experienced, obviously mostly rugby, but there's been interest in terms of performance from other sports as well. And in fact, it's been genuinely, responses have come from across the globe. So to date, we are, we're in double figures with the number of applications received. And only one of those is Welsh, and he hasn't worked in the Welsh game for over 15 years. So, that is a key appointment for us. Not just on an operational level, but as I say, working with Dwayne, driving that winning culture within the group. So there are a number of different aspects, we hope, targeting towards a perfect storm, which will drive our performance forward next year. And hopefully that, as well as, I will say, the work we touched on in academy and development, I will say, your season ticket doesn't just fund what goes on in Dwayne's team. It funds all of that as well. And I think, that's an important part of what the club is about. Everything from the inclusion and the engagement, the girls program, and then through to the pathway. Hopefully, that service to the community, and also hope that we will be better and competitive next year, will mean that number will grow.
Great, and last of the submitted questions really for Simon Mudrak. It's from Crease 16 around funding and investment. In our first meeting in January, you stated that the funding directors have reaffirmed their commitment to the future of the club. Firstly, is this still the case given the continued financial loss? And secondly, we understand one of your key targets was to bring in new investment. Has any new investment been identified and secured?
So in answer to the first part of the question, the new funding agreement that's been talked about was entered into last year, and it was a 6-year framework that the directors had to bind into. But as I mentioned earlier, we are the only existing UK domiciled business within club rugby at the professional level within Wales. And our directors have undertaken personal guarantees to secure the future of the business. Ironically, we tied back in the existing benefactors to the business in order to get through the funding process. And that was part of the negotiation with the union with Steve Phillips at the time. Looking forward, we absolutely are pursuing additional investment into the business. What's really important is to get to a sustainable future. And on that basis, we would look to attract investment in order to carry the business forward, back into growth. And I'm optimistic that we can achieve that and achieve that result.
Great, thanks Simon, thanks boys. We are going to open it up to the floor. We have got some time. If you have any views, if you don't think we've covered anything, that's all. We'll open it up.
Hello, another season ticket holder, 50 miles to each match, and there's too many night games and just going on too late. By the time we get home, it's very late. If you can do something about matches afternoons.
And listen, it's a consistent point from you, and it's a point that we consistently make to URC and EPCR. I'm afraid, what I'll give you now is the reasons why we can't insist on what we have said. We are of the belief, and if this is wrong, please, tell us. But we're never going to keep you all happy, we know that. But we think that Saturday early evening slot is probably the one that works best for most, because you can come to the game, and you can get home at a decent hour. If you've got families, you can get home by bedtime. But also, if your local club rugby is taking place, you can go watch your game and come down to us. So we constantly argue for that slot. The major problem that the league has is that in getting to the sponsorship that they have from broadcasters, they have 8 different broadcasters across the territories, and they have granted to them specific rights, which makes it very difficult for us to get what we want on every occasion. Now, that in itself is emotive, because that sounds as if they're putting the broadcast revenue in front of the fan. And that's a difficult one to swallow. Obviously, we want the broadcast revenue to increase so that we can invest more into the game. So we're caught in that loop. But those representations are made constantly to the league. I do think there's been some improvement, because I think a couple of years ago it was really difficult. But there's still a long way to go. URC accept that next time the broadcast agreements are up for renegotiation, they, as much as we do, would like to get to a number without having to share the rights and give specific rights away to so many broadcasters. Because if there was only 1 or 2 covering the territories, it'd be a lot easier.
That's all. Go Tracy at the back.
Listening to you all this evening, I think we're all very much aware of sort of where we find ourselves with COVID. Obviously, we've got the WRU's negligence over the last few years in relation to the club game, which you've alluded to, and obviously market forces in Japan and France are against us. But I suppose, John, you mentioned, I think, prior to COVID, we'll be the 4th best funded region, which obviously, 4th best funded team in the URC, which obviously no longer is the case. My concern, if I look back at the last 3 years, we've gone from being the most preeminent team in Wales to this year we're sat in 14th and we're fighting for last place with the Dragons and Zebra, who were the last 2 games inevitably. it's gone wrong somewhere, and I'm looking at the introduction of the performance director. So where does the fault lie from where we've gone in 2022 to where we find ourselves now? John, does that sit at your door, or does it sit at the door of the coaching team? I appreciate we've had 3 coaches, but ultimately, I look back at question 6 then, we sort of skirted around that, and we didn't actually say who is to blame for where we are today. And I'd just like somebody to take ownership of that perhaps and say, this is where we've gone, guys, from being 10th in 2022 to at the moment we're a point above Zebra and the Dragons, and those are the last 2 games of the season.
I very much appreciate the frustration, and the facts you quote are indisputable. And I think we discussed today, we're not happy with where we're at. And ultimately, we all have to take responsibility for that. And that's not an attempt to shirk responsibility, nor is it absolution of our need to deal with that and to do better. We've talked a lot about, some of the reasons behind that, but ultimately, we believe we should be in a different place from where we are today. And that's what we've got to fix going forward. I wish we were in a different position this season. You could argue there've been a number of fixtures where, we came, very close to getting a different outcome on the pitch. And there were a couple of fixtures that I think we're bitterly disappointed with our performance, and we kind of got what we deserved. So it does need to be fixed. Clearly we are making changes, by definition. Some of the changes we make and some of the discussions we have and some of the things we do, we do keep behind closed doors. But ultimately, I think as we finalize our recruitment and our restructure and we go into next season, you'll see a desire to change things and to move things forward and to do better next season and beyond.
It's a non-rugby question. There's been a lot of questions about the relationship between the club and supporters over the last couple of years. And by way of example, the relationship between Crease and the club is by my understanding, at an all-time low. We've moved from one kit supplier, shambolic kit supplier, to another not great kit deal as well. The 150-year celebrations were not great, if we're being completely honest about it. Clash FC situation, while a lot of us can agree that the situation was probably, this was the outcome that we were going to come into. It was said that there'd be games into the Clash FC brand this season. That hasn't happened. Supporters lied to, essentially. And, things like the Scarlets failing to have a presence at the end of the Steddfod when it was on our doorstep in Llandovery last year. Big issues. And let's not forget about the Welsh side of the website as well. Still showing personnel who left the club 2 years ago. So we've heard a lot about the club not being as good as it should be. But what's the plan to do something about this?
Yeah, so there's quite a list of items there, and certainly, there's a number of things that we need to fix and resolve. We do have a laundry list of things to work on, and they fall into 3 buckets. So there are those things that we do need to fix. There are those things we don't have enough money to fix, and there are those things that we don't control. Now, to be fair, some of the things you've listed off, we could work on to fix. So what we've got to do is we've got to look honestly across the list. We've got to prioritize them, and we do need to work through them. We're willing to do that, and part of this restructure is to give us the capacity to do that. We've got to find the oxygen to work on some things. We could go on forever with some of the things we've had to work on in terms of restarting this business as a result of COVID. This room here was a Nightingale hospital with how many beds in here? Yeah, so 400 beds. So we've had to, completely rebuild this place. Opening up the East End for the Glasgow playoff. we had to replace tens of thousands of pounds, which we couldn't afford to do ourselves. But, through partnership with Heineken, we were able to rebuild that infrastructure. We have lost people from the team, which we've had no capacity to replace. Right? These are all excuses, but they are facts in terms of what we've been working on. I think my commitment, to you guys is to work honestly through that list and be practical. Put it into those 3 buckets. What can we work on? And let's get some quick wins too. Some stuff we can't afford, but we'll put it on a wish list. I want to get new floodlights. We're going to need new LEDs soon. There's a list of things around the stadium that we'd like to figure out a way to resolve. And then there are some things that are outside of our control. But, my commitment is to work honestly through the list, be transparent in terms of what's doable. Let's identify some quick wins and let's get on with some change.
Hi. Yeah. In a recent BBC article around the structural changes at the club, it reported that the board, without quotations, was dismayed by the negativity surrounding the club. Is that a sentiment you recognise, and how can you justify that? Secondly, in terms of new funding, actually since 2020 we've lost senior funders. Tim Griffiths left the club and immediately joined the board at Gloucester. We haven't had any substantive new money, whereas every other region has attracted new money, and whilst it's nice to be domiciled in the UK, I'd rather have some funding. And finally, you talked about communication and the things you've been doing. I'd like to hear more about what your plans are to innovate that, not just what you've been doing, and in particular how you're going to rebuild the relationship with the trust. No longer involved with the trust, but it's democratically elected. These people are elected to represent the supporters. They have a role, they have a voice, and I'd like to see that relationship strengthened and celebrated by the club more than it has done in recent times. Diolch.
Okay, so there's 5 or 6 points there. The dismay comment I don't recognise. I don't believe it was a quote from me. And I can't actually recollect seeing that online. So apologies for missing that, but that's not anything I can respond to because I genuinely don't recognise it. In terms of funders leaving, as I said, we needed to get personal guarantees and commitments from people to support the very existence of the club. That's a process, that required people to recommit to the club. And I wouldn't want to turn a positive into a negative. When you've got 8 individuals who signed up to personally underwrite the very existence of the club, I certainly would not want that to be considered a negative. I accept your point around UK domiciled and your personal opinion around that, and I say that with no sort of colour. It's really important to us that we effectively don't own this club. We are custodians. None of us involved with the business are looking to make a return out of this club. And we consider ourselves temporary custodians of the business whose job it is to pass it on to the next generation. And I personally believe, and we as a board believe, that doesn't gel with sewing the club up into a offshore trust where you don't have liability for the continued existence of the business. And nor are we looking to maximize our tax position if at some point in time we might want to sell the business, because we have no intent to sell the business. And then in terms of rebuilding the relationship with the trust, I think, you might have your own opinion, but certainly, that is something that we are working on. Increase a representative in the boardroom, get access to more information than any other supporters trust of any other region in Wales. And we need to, leverage that information and leverage the relationship. Businesses like ours don't exist without supporters. And they're really important to us. They're genuinely very important. And back to one of my comments in my opening statement, every single one of us involved in the club today, no matter what our roles are today, started and will end our relationship with this club as a supporter and as a fan.
Great, we'll go, time's dragging on, we'll go to the last couple of questions. Tracy, can you get there? Tracy's behind you there, look.
Hi. What I was going to ask, a lot has been mentioned about how we're going to progress and strategies put in place, but ultimately for season ticket holders, supporters, to see any growth, then it's really got to come from the performance of the players and the rugby on the field. It's good to hear what's going on in the background and things, but obviously, for the finances to grow, that means we need to have a good supporter base. To have a good supporter base, we need to get the things right on the pitch. I was speaking to, I won't mention any names, but to one of the ex-Athletic players earlier on. One thing I mentioned was the fact you're always going to come across teams and groups of players that may be more talented, may have higher finances, but ultimately, if we as a group, the Scarlets themselves, played or at least showed they were playing with 110% effort. I know, I'm not saying they're not, but there are times when we've been watching games this year and it seems like certain elements are not putting that 110% in. And if people could see that, if, like in all sports, in all companies, etc., you see workers who are giving their all, then it would certainly raise the morale, and the expectations then would also become greater, and that's from the supporters and from the players, etc. One other thing me personally, and this is only a personal opinion, I would prefer, when I'm watching the game, it seems to be that there isn't a close contact between the coaching staff and the players while the game is progressing, because you don't seem to be seeing anyone grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and saying, why are we doing this wrong? Why are we performing certain procedures that really are not working, but yet we still carry on doing it? And I just think, we can overcome a lot of our sort of frailties with a lot more grit and a lot more determination. I don't know, if somebody could answer it, that would be great.
Yeah, perfect lineup for Dwayne, that one.
Cheers, Gary. So just in terms of communicating onto the field, I think obviously the way it works with us is we have certain individuals who are water carriers, and at certain times of the game they can get on, and we communicate through radio transmission, basically, in terms of tactics, what we need to be looking at, and so forth. So that's in terms of us as a coaching group physically doing that. It's very difficult in terms of us getting onto the pitch, obviously, but we do communicate through the radios, etc. And that's how that works. Look, I understand that at times this year, we need to have done better, and in terms of showing fight and character, I think it goes back to values, and I think that Scarlet values and core values of this club, and I'd agree, and I think that we're a club who have produced some world-class players, undoubtedly, but I think as a whole, we've had an ethos to punch above our weight, and I think that is what we want to see. And I think that, look, I think there's been times this year where we needed a bit more of that in terms of I suppose a bit of doggedness. I would want to say a bit of dog and show a bit of spirit in that way. And I'm not here to defend. I'm not here to defend that. But in terms of us wanting that, and in terms of the players themselves and the core group of players wanting to improve, I'm not here to question that work ethic. I'm not. And all I can say to you is that it's the determination for us to improve as a group. Like I said in the last question, we're not happy and content. We want to push up the leagues. We want to compete. And I think that the back to the leadership that's so important from that perspective and grabbing hold of it. It wasn't. Well, look, I'm looking through rose-tinted glasses, and I played in a bygone age, but I'm obviously with Gar and Mooney there, but it's the leaders on the field who need to take hold of the game when the game's when they're going tough. Yes, we can prepare in the week, okay, but we it's our job to teach and instill that in them, and that is the step that we're taking. We need to instill that, and we need those leaders to stand up. We're fortunate to have who is going to be a great leader for us. Right? He's led with actions, but as a captain, I'm going to blow smoke up his ass because he's standing here now. But I think that he is the epitome of what we want to be. A Scarlet leader, and I think that people will follow him, and we need more. We need to grow the next group of them.
Right. One more question. Can we make it?
Could I just add to that quickly, Dwayne? We talk about playing the Scarlets way, which would be great to see, but I think what frustrates a lot of fans on the terrace is getting the basic drills right, the scrums, the line out, always struggling with the driving more. Why can't we get these drills installed into the players so that on a Saturday it becomes second nature to them?
Well, look, I think that it has been a border frustration this year, undoubtedly, and I think there's a lot of work that's going into that, and that's an area of improvement, 100% for us. Because we need the ball to be able to play, and that's an area that we are working hard on.
Match day experience. So a few friends are season holders, and we all believe that the person sitting at home is having then tries. We don't say replays. We see a URC logo. Why? We don't hear conversations between the TMO and the ref. We stand in the stands, twiddling our thumbs. But at home, we're not playing, doing all that, and it spoils the experience. What can be done about it?
Who fancies that one? There's lots actually we can control, and lots that we can't. A few of those are probably some things we can't control.
So when we're talking about miking up the ref for home, that's something we've had a sort of a URC conference last August where we all got together and looked at how we can improve the not only the game but the overall match day experience. And that's one of the things we highlighted as something that has to be done, is literally putting that investment in that the league need to do, and invest in ball technology. So when the ref is explaining his decisions, or the TMO, that is audible in the ball, and we have to get that, and that's something URC are working on.
If I could just chip in, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of those couple of points you made about the match day experience. And this is an issue in rugby. I went to Harlequins on Friday. I could have given the same feedback. And I mentioned earlier when somebody asked about where do you expect the Scarlets to be in 5 years' time, the presentation of the game in rugby is not what it should be. We've got things we need to work on from a match day perspective. But within rugby, there are things we do really badly. Rugby is quite a technical game. You go to an NFL game, you are assaulted with data and information about every aspect of the play and every decision that is taking place, and it's totally compelling. And I think rugby's got a great opportunity there. And we have had conferences. I kind of roll my eyes, not at Phil, but, we have a conference to talk about it. And we don't do anything about it. Right? And that has to change. And when private equity came into the game, they talked about this as being something that they would be looking to develop. We haven't seen it yet. But back to my previous answer about the progression of the game over the next 5 years, this is something we need to fix. I come with my kids who are casual rugby fans. They'll come 3-4 games a year. And they're very frustrated with what they see. So it has to be fixed, or we'll lose the next generation of people coming into the game. Yeah. So I'd like to say a few words and then hand back to my dad to close us out. Although clearly, if you look at Gavin, you'll see he's done a deal with the devil, and he looks like he's my son. But I mean, thank you all for your participation this evening. The evening's overrun a little bit, but hopefully that was acceptable to everyone. I think a few of us are sticking around if there are some follow-up questions. It would be good to get some feedback on this event. As I said, we'll be looking to run this twice a season going forward. So it'd be great to get some feedback from what was good, what was not so good, how we can improve things going forward. Thank you to the presenters. So a great deal of passion there. And Fish, sorry for elevating your heart rate to a dangerous level. I think we've got a few trained paramedics around the place, but thankfully they weren't called upon. I've just got a story to share with you, and I'm debating whether I should share this, and please take it in the spirit that it's intended. So I'm going to grab my phone, and Trudy and Garen are going to scowl at me because they warned me we shouldn't be playing with our phones during this session. But what we are privileged to participate in is a incredibly emotive, passionate undertaking of the game of rugby, particularly within this community. And for those of you who have a good memory for calendars, on the morning of the 30th of March, I received a message through Facebook Messenger. Those of you who may message me through Facebook Messenger might know I'm not particularly current with my Facebook Messenger messages. But I got a message that morning from somebody that I went to primary school with. And I went to primary school at the old Furness Primary School, Kitty Corner from the old Stradley Park. And I'll read you this message. Hello, Simon. It's been a very, very long time since I've seen you last. I apologize for the bad grammar, but this isn't mine. Probably since school, Furness Primary School. Hope you're keeping well. Do you remember me? From Furness. I've thought about you on a few occasions over the years, about what you're up to, where you are and that sort of thing. And I came across your name on a rugby post recently, and I thought, that is Simon. And I've seen your pic, and it's full of spelling mistakes too, by the way. And you've not changed much, mate. Good to see you and the family are doing well. And it has been 40 years. Time is racing by. Like I said, I've thought about you one or two times over the other years. And like some of the other people that I would not give a damn for. But for old friends like you, it's nice to see you doing well. Okay? So that was sent to me the morning of the 30th. Okay, that evening, he sent me another message which said, you are and I have to spell this word because I don't know what this word means. You are a like the rest of them. The 30th of March was when we played Glasgow. So on that note, everything we do within these four walls, and as we've discussed today on a much more broader basis, impacts all of us deeply. And I believe we're all here, every single one of us in this room, for the right reasons. There are other things we could choose to do with our lives, but why would we do that? We want to be here. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your time today. and I look forward to seeing you back here shortly for games or elsewhere across the region, supporting the Scarlets in the community. Thank you very much.
And the bar, there are a number of us here. We are hanging around. Have a pint at the bar. If there's any further questions that people want any clarity on, then please come up, say hello, and ask what you need. Hey, thank you everyone for attending. Diolch yn fawr i chi.